on a fairly complex topic, how to build a local MCP environment. I think this is a pretty critical one because if you're interested in getting involved in what Utkarsh is doing, you need your own environment. So even though he's the last, I think that it's, perk up. And I'll take it away, Brian.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, first, Sasha, you're a hard act to follow. I do see that some of the work that you did with the slide polish and information aggregation, I think, though, is also relevant to some of the things I'll talk about here. I decided, one, to have a little bit of fun, just to sort of set up what you're about to see and what we're about to go through, and two, to be very meta. So I used Google Anti-Gravity, or I used AI to create a presentation about how I developed an MCP to enable people to develop MCPs so that they can use AI to do development. So very meta. So first, Merry Christmas to everybody. Merry Config Manager, as we may say. I'm going to talk about MCP Config Manager. And what MCP Config Manager, well, I will clarify, MCP Config Manager is a vibe-coded project of mine to solve a problem that I was experiencing. It's been published to GitHub. It can be, freely forked, adopted. I would call it beta right now, but I think it provides an awesome opportunity to talk about some of the realities of MCP use. And also some of the best practices or potential patterns that I've discovered. So, I think we all know by now what an MCP is, considering the discussion that we've had in this holiday party. But I'll still take a moment to talk about it, right? The MCP server is a model context protocol. It's an open standard that was launched by Anthropic, wild enough, hardly 13 months ago. Right, it has penetrated the industry. We'll talk a bit about this idea of model context protocol, which always struck me as a former product marketer as a funky name, right? But if you really think about this idea that we've had models that always maintained their own self-contained context, which effectively is, a brain in a jar, a fish in a tank. So this idea of being able to take what was isolated context and give that flexible and arguably even global context of potentially anything else is like when you take that brain in a jar and you give it arms and legs, or when you take that fish and you enable it to get out of the tank and walk, right? So this is really, I have a model, I've established a protocol to enable that with additional context. And as many of us know, you may have what we call your MCP client, your LLM model, your Claude, your Copilot, your Ollama. You then can choose from a set of clients, and those clients will inject in an efficient way additional knowledge about a server, an API, another capability that is available. And this is very helpful, one, because you don't have to train all this information sort of into the model and the model weights. But also, two, because it gives access to real-time information while establishing a reasonably efficient and secure contract to get that other data. Meaning, your host contains all of the macro context that is specific to you and sort of that data that you want to have protected. When it needs additional information, it is able to outsource all the collection of that information, the knowledge about the API, the knowledge about the tools to your client. And all of that, what's beneath the glacier, is hidden from the server, and sort of a simple, well-defined response is delivered back to the client. Now, I use this analogy because it's common. I wouldn't necessarily say I love it, but think about it as USB-C for AI applicants, right? So it's a standard, right? It's a standardized way, so I can take, this cord from my laptop and I can plug it into an SSD drive. I can plug it into a power bank, right? I can use this one connector to serve my model with whatever I need at that time. And the reality is this, this project from Anthropic to sort of give your models arms and legs, which frankly was rolled out quickly, but people jumped on it rapidly. A lot of people contributed, also especially Anthropic, for it to iterate, mature, gain more security. There were some rough spots in its maturation where there's some key vulnerabilities identified. And we eventually achieved a point where we've seen massive adoption by trusted enterprise companies. So Microsoft Copilot, practically any major AI solution that you see today or commercial Gen AI solution has a list of a virtual app store or like Claude skill sets that are all layers to simplify the usage of MCPs. And then I think roughly 8 days ago, um, um, there was a move that should really help MCP grow by giving it a ground for impartial innovation with the Linux Foundation, where Ortelius and CDF also live. So it was donated to the Agentic AI Foundation a couple of weeks ago. So I'm really excited to see the growth that we'll see here. If you look around, we're already starting to see some educational content and some larger industry engagement coming out of that relationship. Now, there is one of the things that happens for all of us. One is, I'll start by saying that while we see a version of the MCP protocol represented in Microsoft Copilot or Claude, those are always presented with a level of limitation. One, right? You have to go through whatever UI is exposed to connect those. Anthropic or Claude frequently has changed its supported protocol from streaming HTTP to SSE, and that's changed across its tools. So that can be difficult, right? Two is if you're concerned about having protected data or you need access to local components on your system to do work, spin up a Docker container, run a bash command, inspect your directory and reorganize your files, because if you're like me, they get out of control. Or you're generally just concerned with your data, then you need a local implementation of that. But the problem was with this growth and with this need to that local implementation, it creates a new version of what was dependency hell. And this is configuration hell. Not anything that looks as clean as what we saw from our last presenter, where everything is well structured. I mean, for an example, if you look at Claude alone, Anthropic's, you have one configuration file for your MCPs for Claude Desktop, another for Claude Code CLI, another one for Claude Code VS Code. And keep in mind that generally all three of these have a global context, a user context, and a project context, right? So for one vendor, that is 9 different configuration files. Now you start to think about, with this rapidly evolving industry, one day Gemini is the best tool, or you want to test it. Another day it's Cursor. Another day it's Kira. So every time you want to try a new tool, you have to figure out how to take these MCPs that you built into your workflow and translate them to this new environment. And it is a pain. So configuration hell is a great description. I see nodding there, right? And I'll call out here, and we'll see this a bit as I try to hide my keys. The other thing that goes on with this setup is there's always this process oftentimes of, I'm connecting to an API, go get your API key, go get your secret, open up Visual Studio Code or Vim, find the line, plop it in, your JSON break, you load your client, your JSON breaks. Go back, iterate again. Now when you do want to do it the new client, you're stuck digging around and finding your API keys or going back and generating. Many of us may be seeing where we didn't store our secret, we didn't save it, so you go to GitHub and you have like 10 different secrets for the same application. This will help prevent that. So this is why MCP Config Manager exists. It exists to provide you a unified visual interface to your API tools so you can mitigate the time that you spend wrestling with JSON and you could manage them from a single place. And frankly, I'll give credit. Again, this was, I think, a side project. You'll see possibly when we look at my GitHub repos, I have a number of them that I was working on September. And Sasha, our esteemed presenter, said, "Hey, I found this thing that's really cool that this guy made." And I'm like, I made that, and so I realized there might be some value and it would be worth sharing, right? Which thank you for that compliment, Sasha. So some of the things you could do before we get into demo and we talk about some best practices. You can manage all your servers in a unified view. Add, edit, configure MCP servers across all of your clients. So here we see a central list of MCP servers, and I'll demonstrate how we can copy those across clients. Now, this is part of my AI test, so we're going to skip it. Now, the other thing I eventually added was just the ability to give some visualization. And we'll talk a bit about the context economy problem. One of the reasons visualization was helpful and important was to be able to see what the resource usage for a given tool was. Next, I found that if you're in one of these isolated ecosystems, if I go to Visual Studio or VS Code has an MCP marketplace now. Great. But whatever I download and install from there has no bearing on what I get in Claude Desktop, or another place. And we're making a lot of progress, but we still lack unification. So before we go further, let me do let's go ahead and switch our screen. And just go ahead and take a look at it. And we'll just go through a couple of steps, but I encourage people that are interested to go play with it. Though what I really want you to think about more than the MCP Config Manager here is just this concept of developing, managing, and using MCP servers. So we're starting here with what is our visual workspace. And the key thing I wanted to call out that sort of drove the visualization is what I found is that I first learned about MCP servers. I went out and installed every one you can find. I developed some myself. Files, iTerm, Unity for a video game, Blender, Playwright, Spinach for notes, HubSpot. I think we might even find an Ortelius one in here. Google Docs, right? Great. I can install all of these things. Every single one of these use your context memory app. And many of them don't do it efficiently. So at some point, I was wondering why I couldn't even get through a single prompt. So we needed to expose that. Now, we'll see some things. Desktop Commander MCP, one of the most popular ones, phenomenal tool for opening iTerm, running shell commands, etc. It consumes 11,000 tokens out of the box, right? So one of the values that this gives you is you can load it, and after some time, you'll get a rendering of how many tools are available via the configured MCP servers and how many tokens they consume. And in this case, we'll see we tried to ping the servers, but there's only 3 of 5 active. So I'm not going to use my N8M MPC right now. Actually, I'll remove Google Slides. This is one that I developed. So I need to save some memory. Let me get rid of 470 tokens. I'm just going to delete it. I'm going to go ahead and directly save my configuration. And now just to double check, if we look at the JSON while trying to quickly not show my keys, you will see desktop MCP, ship ape, the N8, and the Google MCP is not there anymore. All right, I'll have to reset my N8N keys. Another thing in terms of this management is how do we manage configurations across systems? So if we look here, I happen to have Claude Desktop, Claude Code, VS Code installed. I have the ability to migrate my controls across my system scope, my user scope, and my project scope. Okay, that is one dimension. But we're also going to go ahead and take a look at our classic view. Our classic view will give us a list. It gives me the ability to edit and configure my settings. I can go in and edit keys. I won't click it. But what I can also do is say I'm working on a project and I want to use my ship ape context memory. Well, what I can do is I can click this and I can go ahead and automatically migrate it to one of my other setups. I already have one here, so that doesn't work for this example. But again, the key thing here is I now deploy a new environment. I can take an existing MCP server with all of its configs and transfer it. Um, so the other thing we talked about earlier is discovery, right? How do I, just find new MCP servers? So one of the things we've done is we've pointed at the Anthropic GitHub repository, and this may need to be updated or ultimately tracked. And we're able to look at the GitHub repository, the overall list of MCP servers on that page, and we can search and find MCP servers that may serve a need. So what's a good one? There's a CVE. Let's see if the search is going to work. In demo, Databricks Smart. In the interest of time, I'm just going to grab something like Octopus Deploy. So I could find this. It'll pull the metadata out of GitHub. I can validate the downloads and the stars, so I get some community validation of its usage. I could click view on GitHub to understand more, and I could just click install. And if I'm lucky and the demo gods treat me well, I broke NPM this morning. So the demo gods didn't treat me well on this particular one because the NPM based install. But when it is working, what you will see is that I now will have additional servers in my MCP catalog. Okay. I'll just call out quickly that another thing, and this is more about the application that it does enable you to do, is just turn on and off various environments. If you don't need those environments, you don't use them. Once they are available, you can jump around, switch to a given environment. Let's look at VS Code, for instance, here. Let's try to get our scope right. Nope, I've got to have to wait for it for a load for a minute. And then when you are in an environment, then you're able to just drag and drop your MCP configurations here, so you're no longer dealing with JSON. All right, so that is it for the demo. Let me switch back to, thank you, Sasha. Ways to think about using this is to, manage your MCP context. Now it's just less, you have the opportunity to do more than just say, I'm going to install an MCP in this environment, but rather I'm going to create configurations for specific needs. If I'm doing sort of reporting for management, I'm going to install my Google Docs or my Google Slides MCP in Google Desktop, and I'm going to focus on that. If I'm deploying my app to Vercel, then I'm going to go ahead and use the Vercel MCP. I may bring in some code quality checks. I may bring in a security agent connected by a client. And I don't have to have them all there and consume the context, but rather I can bring in the MCPs that are needed for my context or the context of my work. Now, just sharing some of how we did this and a pattern that you may consider using is what I did is I used Claude Desktop with MCPs that gave access to my file system to do all the high-level strategy, planning, architecture, design, and then generate a PRD and then make that available to build with VS Code. Now, this is before IDEs or the agents had planning mode. I will say that still oftentimes, even with planning mode, the UI of the desktop client makes it a little bit easier for tasks like doing market research, doing technical research, and arriving at a plan. And again, what you can do with MCP Config Mgr here is I have a set of things that I need in desktop to accomplish my needs, and I have a set of things in VS Code to accomplish my needs. Some other quick best practices if people aren't using them. You now have power giving the fish or the brain's legs to do things, to also give it eyes, right? So I can use Playwright MCP or just even Playwright to run NPM test suites. So as I iterate to not only validate my quality, but enable Playwright to take screenshots, deliver them to the agent to diagnose and correct. Um, Other things that I've used throughout this process and then I put into MCP config or MCPs for work tracking, right? So I can take that PRD or that plan, very similar to spec-driven development, but also surfacing tools, surfacing and using traditional tools. I can create that work plan or tickets in Jira or Linear. And then as I work with my AI agent, I can send it to go retrieve tickets, do the work, report back, and close out and update ticket status. All the stuff that we don't necessarily love doing as humans and developers, outsourcing that cognitive load. Another example is, we built this with MCP. So at some point, keeping the UI stable was really tough. So middle of the process, Figma released the Figma Dev Mode server that would allow me to use a Figma MCP to pin what the AI agent was creating to a design in Figma. So with that, I would say, give it a look if you're interested, or, if not, if it doesn't fit your need, I hope you at least take away some inspiration. The project lives here on GitHub. There is a reasonable README. It should deliver a reasonable, 5-minute quick start. And if you are running on Mac OS, on Apple Silicon or Intel, there is a signed binary or DMG that you can download and run there. Over the holidays, I'll probably be iterating on this more. But for anybody here or anybody listening, I would love contributions. So, Merry Christmas and thank you for your time.
Yes, so well done, Brian.
Yeah,
That's
Brian, that's
awesome.
brilliant.
Were.
It's brilliant. I'm wishing we should do more around advertising that through our network. It's awesome. And there has been a mystery solved. We now know who IT Socialist is.
I didn't say anything earlier. I don't know if you caught my smirk.
Yeah. Like, who is IT Socialist? I want to meet
I
them.
remember, no, but there was the one governing board meeting, and I was like, I didn't know IT Social was Brian. I'm like, oh guys, have you seen this MCP manager by this guy called IT Social? I didn't know it was Brian.
That's funny.
Brian's being so incognito.
It's classic.
Well, everybody, thank you for everything you've done this year. Steve's back on. He had to jump off momentarily for another call. But you're great. We love you so much. And we do, Ortelius needs some extra stars. We have about 360 stars on GitHub. I'd like to see if we can get it up to about 500 in the next few months. So push it out and tell people that Ortelius is looking for stars for Christmas.
Yes.
Brian is going to create a Ortelius star MCP server to do that for us.
Well, and while you're at it, go start Brian, IT Socialist MCP Config Manager.
Yeah, my stars.
The configuration is one of the challenge whenever we deal with these MCPs. I mean, you see these front-end technologies, right? Even though they use like React or Next, they still, if they are using like Tailwind or something, they still have those, tailwind.config file. But in case of, when you're creating a Python application with MCPs, there was no way for MCP configuration or discovery as a whole. And I think he has taken on a different level, providing a different isolation for a different configuration. Let's say this is your dev or staging. So yeah, kudos, good work.
Excellent. Thank you. And yeah, I'm gonna look to do this. Got me excited about it again, so I'll look to do some more work. And then Tracy, hopefully, we can work with Ortelius on MCP Config Manager.
We should talk about, if that's something we could. Certainly, we should be able to use our network to get the message out. Absolutely.
And before I give up my time, I do want to say this is one of the first times I've gotten to join the Ortelius Christmas party. I love it. What I love about this group that helps drive this project forward is it's like a family. So this has been fun. Thank y'all. Thank y'all.
I always tell everybody it's a true open source community. It really is. There's not many left, because the giants take these tools and call them open source and pay somebody to write them. But we are a true open source community who's really trying to help each other and build some awesome tools. So love you all, and have an amazing holiday and New Year, and stay safe. And we will see you all in January. So we're off for 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good one,
Okay.
guys.
Yes.
Bye
Thank
all.
you.
Happy
Merry Christmas.
holidays.
See you.
Okay.
Happy
Bye,
holidays.
everyone.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
everyone. Happy
Bye.
holidays.